Hey guys, I'm Russell. Today we're going to look at a TV console I got from a friend who got it from someone else and they just didn't want it. It's not in bad shape, it just needs to be updated, so let's take a look.
I mean, you can see right here, it's pretty decent. It's just boring. Those minor repairs are just dings and scratches, but then I want to update the front to look a little more modern with the cane type of front. So I think I will either take out the center panel or this trimmed piece. I'm not sure yet, so I don't know. I think the trim might make it look weird, so we'll figure that out as we go on. Scuff sanding with this 180 grit sandpaper serves two purposes. Gets rid of dents and scratches and helps the paint adhere better. I always do this and I do it over the entire project. My paint will be a primer paint mix that I get from Home Depot. Important note here, this Drydex is spackling, not wood filler. So it's good for scratches, but even the little dents on here, it wasn't the best option for. I should have used wood filler and you'll see why later. First things first, my fingers are not even close to the blade. So thank you to all of those who like to make comments about my safety practices. I'm using the circular saw to make breaking the center panel out easier. I'm still not decided about the raised trim portion, but I know I'm getting rid of the center piece, so I'll start there. I made several cuts and I couldn't get it to budge, so I made some along the edge, and then I take this Japanese pull saw, P-U-L-L, pull saw, to get where I didn't dare get with the blade. And after a bunch of cuts, I could start ripping these pieces out and saw how they were glued into the frame. Of course, it required some cleanup where I couldn't rip them out entirely, or the glue was there, or I had cut too close to the frame to rip it out. Then I'm doing a final sand of my spackled surfaces. I go through with a Sharpie to circle anything I might have missed or over sanded, so when I go back through, I don't miss it. I tend to miss a lot of things, especially when there's spackling everywhere. So here I am going to try a new experiment. I'm going to mix my paint with my top coat and spray them on at the same time. Usually I do a couple coats of paint, then I do a light sanding, and then I do the top coat, and between the top coats I do sanding until the final top coat. I hope this just reduces the amount of time I spend spraying. I'm a little worried. I don't want to add too much top coat to this paint in case it changes the color, but I also would like to try to speed up this process. I will let you know if it works or not. I am using this extra kitchen strainer, don't tell my wife, to clean up the paint. Sometimes it will start to dry in there, or when you pour some back after a project, there's clumps in it, and I just want to keep that out of my spray gun. I'm just doing a final clean with water, but the water ate through some of the spackling, which is why I should have used wood filler on these dents. So I decided to see how terrible it might look, and once I got the paint on there, it was obvious, so I had to re-spackle it, and I just didn't wipe it away with water. So, word to the wise, use filler for any dents where the spackling worked great on the scratches. It is so dang hot that I think the paint started to dry maybe even before it hit the surface, because I couldn't get rid of some of the streaks that you see here, and that's usually not the case. So I think I need to stick to spraying in the mornings or in the later evenings when it's not so hot outside. You can just see the sheen is not right and it's inconsistent, and that actually caused some problems later. And I had to go back over many times with multiple coats of paint and top coat. Ultimately, mixing the paint with the top coat didn't work. I don't think my ratio was right, so I'm gonna have to just do another top coat later. Forgot to tape off the doors so that I didn't spray the interior. There was no reason to paint it. It was in great shape and it's dark in there. You can hardly tell it's a different color. So here I am just taping that off so I can spray without any concern. See those little dents? Yeah, should have taken care of them beforehand. So I'm just throwing another light layer of spackling on there, and they actually worked great. And you'll see that it sprays on great and it covers everything up really well. Here I've actually gotten a lot closer to the surface to make the paint pool more. I'm usually hesitant to do that because it will start to drip or puddle or just look inconsistent, but because it's so dry, I went a little bit slower and got closer to the surface than I typically would. Everything dried so quickly that by the time I was done spraying, the interior was already dry. So I'm putting the little shelving pins back in so I can put the shelf right back in after my first layer of top coat, so I don't have to try to do it on the ground or anything. And this is the top coat because, like I said, the mixture didn't work. So next I took a little trip to a place we like to call Walmart, and I decided instead of cane or this webbing stuff that is so expensive on Amazon or anywhere that you'll go to buy it, I decided to use burlap. I've seen this done by other DIYers on YouTube and Instagram. Decided to go with the fine weave, threw a couple in the cart, and that's what we ended up using. Lots of adhesion things available. Saw Mod Podge. I actually didn't know how to use Mod Podge, so I turned to Google real quick. How does hodgepodge work? Okay, it's Mod Podge. That was embarrassing. Regardless, learned everything I needed and decided to use this as my adhesive. I got the burlap home, shook it out to clean it off. There's just a lot of lingering strings and lint and other things. Didn't want that getting in the final result of my project. Squirted everything down with some water, and then I was going to iron out those creases. I do not want those in my final product. I see that sometimes on other people's projects, and I think it looks terrible, so trying to mitigate any wrinkles. Next step was to run into the kitchen and get everything set up. I really didn't want to be working in the garage today. It was so hot. I'm a wimp. So brought everything inside so I could reasonably work indoors. Read the instructions. I think my big mistake here is that I didn't use enough Mod Podge. It indicated I shouldn't go too heavy on it, but it was fine in the end. Once I get it in the frame, you can't even tell. And the frame holds the burlap in there. After just making sure it was secure, it recommended in a YouTube video that I watched to use like a credit card. So this is not sponsored by Topgolf, but I did use my Topgolf card. This is a couple hours later. I was doing other stuff. I think I could have come back earlier and cut this out. I will not cut directly on the edge of the panel. That way I just have excess if I need it. I won't, but you'll see what I mean later. I already attempted a dry fit, meaning without glue, and it fit really well, so here I am adding just regular wood glue. The panel is snug enough that it'll be in there tight. I just didn't want to risk anything, and more than that, I didn't want to risk the burlap shifting around once it was in there. Like I said, Mod Podge wasn't a great adhesive, so this is just, securing it. The brad nailer unfortunately punched through the other side, and you can see where it pushed a sliver of wood up, and it caused a very minor mishap that was easily fixed. After the brad nailer punched through, I decided to start brad nailing it vertically instead of horizontally on the ground. It just puts less pressure on it and it doesn't punch through as much. So it's secured with Mod Podge, wood glue, brad nails, but the burlap rides the sides because I cut it like that and is pinched between the frame and the panel, so that gives it even more security. And then I just added back that sliver of wood. I think these round brass handles are fire. I love these little things, and I think they add a lot to the piece. Don't forget about the before, and here is the after. I really like the burlap. I think next time I'll go with a wider weave instead of a fine weave. But all in all, for a free piece of furniture, I think it turned out great. $6.60 for the handles, $10 for the burlap, less than $10 for the paint and top coat.